Welcome, financial professionals. I am Steve Walker, Vice President of Institutional Accounts and partner for E4 Insurance Services, welcoming you to The Brew, building relationships every week. Thanks for tuning in. For those of you joining The Brew for the first time, welcome. We like to start the Brewcast by celebrating today's national days. We've got three of them here. We've got National Autism Awareness Day, National Peanut Butter and Jelly Day. Sounds delicious. I've had a few of those. And National Ride Your Horse to a Bar Day. I can't say that I've ever done that one, but I'm sure there's a few on the call that will maybe give it a go here before too long, since it's a national day. April's lineup will focus on key person and executive benefits. Brad Newcomb, Regional Vice President with John Hancock, is here to discuss how business owners can reward their top talent beyond compensation to keep them from seeking opportunities elsewhere. Finding your top talent is hard enough. Let us show you how to keep those top talent people feeling valued. So we thank Brad for joining us today, and another plug also for our Building Business Together event, Great Lakes. It was a tongue twister right there, but that is April 29th. Brad is going to be there. If you haven't registered yet, make sure go sign on. We've got some powerful speakers. It's going to be a great day of sharpening the saw. So just wanted a quick little plug for that. So as we get going here, Brad, excited to kick off April. I know we've got a nice discussion here, really focusing on some employer bonus plans. But why don't you maybe introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your role, and then my kind of opening question to kind of kick it off is going to be, we're looking at the business market and working with business owners. How have you seen growth in the business space over the last 6, 12, 24 months? Kind of what have you seen happening?
Definitely. And thank you, Steve. Thank you, everyone, for your time today. And thank you to all of E4 for the opportunity today. Definitely appreciate it. It's great to be working with E4 again, and definitely, hopefully, providing some valuable conversation pieces that you can have with your clients and prospects in the field. So the Brew is a fantastic event, and I love how it builds relationships and builds knowledge as you work through the year, and just a great program. So thank you first and foremost. My name is Brad Newcomb with John Hancock on the life insurance distribution side. Have been in this business for 23 years now, so a lot of experience at multiple capacities at different carriers, as well as in the brokerage world myself. So I've learned a lot of valuable experience, and things that I enjoy the most are sharing those experiences and best practices with the distribution partners that I work with. So to kind of set up first, what your question, Steve, and I think it's the thing that I find most is I'm going to sit down with a business owner. This is something that I haven't really done much of in the past, and there's some hesitance usually to having those discussions, right? And I think our topic today will be one that can be very beneficial and can hopefully make it an easy initial conversation. So, what has been happening in the marketplace, to your point, there's a lot of transition happening amongst employees. I think when we think back, and I think to my father, for example, he worked at the same company for over 30 plus years until he retired. That used to be the old norm of employment. You started with a company, you worked your way up. You enjoyed the employer-employee relationship. A lot of times is a lot different than it is today. And so really what that's driven with that technology, just the culture, is a lot of employees at all demographic ages, from first exiting college, even through their 50s and 60s, are consistently looking for new positions and new roles. I think with the implement of technology, jobs out there are much more widely seen through LinkedIn, through Indeed, through platforms of that nature. And so we've got this, cyclical environment where people are moving jobs quite frequently, a lot of times, every 3 to 4 years. And from an employer perspective, puts a lot of pressure on achieving their goals, keeping consistency and keeping, their company moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and it used to be kind of like you mentioned, you work at a place for 20, 30, 40 years, have a nice little party with a cake, get a gold Rolex, a nice pension for the rest of your life. And again, those the Rolexes have been replaced with Apple Watches, no longer provided. And those pensions are more in that defined benefit, 401k type of space. So going above and beyond that is for those high earners, those key people, it's exactly what we're going to talk about this month, and excited you kind of teed it up perfectly for yourself, Brad. So I'll let you keep going here and talking on some of these executive bonus plans.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And I think, as we get into the call today, there's definitely, multiple layers and opportunities in the conversation to have with the employer. And one of the things that I say should be the first question is, what is the impact and who are those individuals that drive the impact to your business day in and day out that you can't afford to lose? What's going to happen if that individual, would no longer be with your company? And I think historically, in the insurance and life insurance world, we've thought about key person from a perspective of someone passing away prematurely, right? Where today, with how individuals are moving through job to job, career to career, maybe it's more about them leaving the company, and the conversation's more about retention, right? We've seen definitely an increase in the transition of businesses amongst multiple generations, amongst multiple owners. There's been a lot of consolidations, mergers, acquisitions, and when you're setting up that transition, having key people in place is a very valuable equation to the number one, the price that's going to be offered, and number two, to the success of that transition. So those purchasers of the business are really focused on who's there and who drives this equation. And a lot of times, the employee, the business owner today may have other plans and objectives going forward. And what would happen if those individuals that are helping them day to day, that they've delegated out, job functions to run those particular organizations, is very, very, beneficial of them achieving their next plan and next goal. I'll share a quick story. We want to share stories that we can make our own. And so, I was sitting with a very good friend of mine. He was looking at selling his business, in the next 5 to 10 years. We were sitting around, very informal discussion. And I said, how's your planning come along with regards to doing this? And, the question was, everything's moving fine. I've gotten some valuations. I've gotten some offers. I've got my next, project to work on. And I, simply asked him, I said, so who are those individuals that, are, helping drive that forward, that they're maintaining the day-to-day, efforts? And he identified 3 key employees, that were leading 3 distinctive, roles inside of the company with people underneath them. And, we put a plan just like what we'll talk about in place. Very simply, a plan that the employee owns. The employer, my good friend, didn't want to give up control of that, where they could just take that bonus, leave, because that's not helping him achieve, what he's trying to do, is getting to that transition point, and through that transition point and earn out to get the most value of the buck, right? And so we put this plan in place, put a restrictive endorsement bonus arrangement attached to it, which gave some control. And in turn, it affected his total buyout number by significant amounts, 4 times. And the big reason for that was, 4 times of his investment, let me clarify that, into this planning piece. But, the big thing is the company that was buying was saying, okay, you're going to be here for another year or two. how's this going to be on, for the next 5 years, 10 years? And he had this plan in place that was only 4 years into it. So there's 6 more years to be able to go. And so they had those employees locked in and they could absorb that restricted bonus arrangement, through that period of time to keep those people there. So very simple conversations to move through. But, as we look through, we're going to talk about 162 bonus, what it is, what a restrictive bonus plan, a restricted endorsement bonus arrangement is, and kind of walk through that plan. And so, I think, where are we seeing this? And again, a lot of times, business owners are looking for the lowest expense piece, and they typically look at term insurance when they're looking at life insurance. And that works very well for key person coverage. It's an inexpensive way if somebody prematurely dies. But the value of permanent insurance, really works in these executive bonus arrangements because they're building cash value. Steve, you already mentioned those pensions aren't typically there any longer for those key executives or anybody inside the companies. And so this is a way to give them more money, be able to not have to offer to 100% of the employees, and the executive, the key person is getting the benefits of permanent cash value life insurance, that gets, tax-free distributions during their retirement if they needed a tax-free death benefit. And then with John Hancock, you mentioned the Apple Watch, they can go through and the insured can get access to our Vitality program, which is another executive level benefit. And we're seeing cases being positioned that way with us is, adding Vitality and the features and benefits and rewards that we have inside of that program that's just hitting its 10th anniversary this month, actually, is another key driving factor there. So, permanent insurance is the way to go. And if we look at this, the first step is identifying, to our discussion point earlier, who are those key people that you want to reward, you want to retain, you can't afford to lose, right? That's the whole thing. This is business continuity discussion, revenue continuity discussion. As you sit and look, I have a neighbor of mine a few doors down that's a executive recruiter, mostly in the technology space. And his whole company is about finding C-suite executives for technology companies. We were having a conversation not that long ago. He's charging 30 to 50% of first year total compensation package to find somebody in the C-suite. So, if they're making $500,000 in total compensation, he's charging, up to $250,000 to find that. So there's the monetary piece of being able to articulate that back to the business owner saying, how much is this going to cost you money-wise to go find somebody? Because most of them aren't good recruiters, right? Or have somebody inside their organization to do that. And secondly, how does that derail relationships, maybe with key business partners, business relationships with what they're trying to drive towards, if they're trying to sell the business or be able to move forward and grow the business. So the monetary side of this is impactful. And if you relate it back to, how much is this going to cost on a year-to-year basis? Is it worth saving that $250,000 charge to go have somebody hired to find somebody and the downtime of moving that?
Well, and along that line too, Brad. I mean, it's expensive. It's kind of like the advisors that are listening in, to this podcast, whether they're listening in today live on National Peanut Butter and Jelly Day, or watching on our Brew blog. It's the same thing. It's easier to keep a client. It's easier to keep an employee than to go and find a new one. So again, Brendan, a mentor of mine, once said, in regards to this, if you water your grass when that top talent goes and looks around the fence, the other side's not going to look greener. So again, taking care of those people that you really care about. So that is great. One quick question I was would have, because again, it's for some advisors it's a little bit of a newer space, but you see any pressures that advisors have when entering into the business planning market? Somebody that's maybe dipped their toe a little bit here or there, but what do you see kind of somebody trying to get into this market from a advisor standpoint?
Yeah, I think, the first hesitancy I've always had, and, when I was in a different role in this industry, it was, I'm going to go talk to a business owner. What should I say? right? That was, I don't know how many conversations I had with that. And, one thing that we've done really well at John Hancock, is we've actually put together a program called Business Owner Solution System, or BOSS for short. And what it is an 8-point talking track to go in and have a discussion with business owners, not only about their business, but also about, their personal planning outside of their business and what their legacy planning is going to be. And so, I would say one of the big things is, what do I say? And if I go in with one particular piece, such as, what is your buy-sell agreement? And they're like, we just reviewed that. We just, updated it. We have the insurance in place. And then you're like, what do I say next? And so what BOSS really does is saying, let's identify key person risks first and foremost, because that's driving your revenue and keeping your business continuity in place. Then we talk about the buy-sell planning. Let's just make sure, let's do a review. We have people at John Hancock and our advanced markets team that can help, maybe identify some of the opportunities there or missteps. And with the Connolly decision, a quick question about asking, is it a redemption buy-sell agreement? Because there may be some, needs to make sure that that's compliant and doesn't get included in the estate. And then we talk about, how do we protect the business owner's family? Personal key person is something that's a lot of times missed in sole proprietorships, right? What happens, if the business owner is no longer alive? How's the family made whole? How do they go through and find somebody else? And so that's a great opportunity to have a discussion. Next is saving outside of the business, because a lot of times those business owners are sitting there and just continually reinvest in the business, and that's where all the retirement is. There are, definitely roadblocks and speed bumps that can happen in there that can derail that valuation and the sale of that business. And then finally, let's talk about legacy planning with regards to estate equalization. If you have family members in the business and outside the business, and what do you want to provide from a legacy perspective? So we've really tried to make that more conversational and identify multiple different areas, rather than going in with one singular, approach and getting stalled, right? Let's talk about it from a planning perspective. Ask the business owner which one of these are most important, and then be able to move on from there.
Awesome. No, very cool stuff. So yeah, let's maybe hop in. Obviously, we've got these executive bonus plans and really that restrictive endorsement bonus arrangement. How does that tell us how that could be a benefit for the clients that our advisors are working with?
Yeah, for sure. And so the 162 bonus, as I mentioned before, the business can pick which employees are beneficial to the business. There has to be good rhyme or reason. You can't have somebody that, is, picking up, the trash in the parking lot and that's a key person, right? But it could be anybody that they choose that's helping drive the business forward. That's, from a key person perspective. So they want to see that. And, typically they're using 162 bonus because the business wants the tax deduction today. They don't want to push that down the road like they would with a deferred comp or a SERP type plan. They're seeing, they're wanting tax mitigation today. And so that's why they're entering into this. And finally, the employee ultimately owns this policy. So you get to add features such as long-term care riders, right? That, you wouldn't be able to done if it's an employer-owned plan. And so the employee owns this plan. There's a way to restrict their access to it, which we'll get into here in a second. But the company gets the tax deduction today because it is compensation through a bonus, right? The employee owns the policy. The employee locks in their insurability, and it's typically done on an overfunded, basis where it's building cash value. And then there's also that death benefit if something would happen to that employee that would pass on to their next generation. So that's how that works. Again, some of the things that motivates business owners is it motivates key individuals and makes them not look around the other side of the fence, right, to see if the grass is greener. It allows them to have different discussions, with that business or with that key person inside of the business. It's simple to administer. There's not a lot of different reporting or a need for a third-party administrator typically with regards to this, unless there's a large, number of individuals that they're wanting to do this planning for. And then, as we just talked about before, the policy can be customized to the benefit of the employee. If someone wants more death benefit focused, you can structure the life insurance solution to be more death benefit focused. If it's more cash accumulation focused, they can be able to go through and utilize that planning in a product that fits that need better. And each employee can be done something differently. They don't all have to be the same. So definitely some benefits there. And, the big thing is with a lot of business owners is control, right? They always want to be in control. That's one thing why they wanted to go into business for themselves. And so it's, I'm giving this additional compensation outside of my entire benefits package for that particular employee. How do I give them this money and not allow them to walk away the next day? I don't know how many times I've had friends, have had associates, that their typical, approach to giving bonuses is every year at some point in the year, they just give a single bonus out to their staff, right? But how many times has that bonus been paid and somebody leaves the next day? They know when that bonus is going to be, they figure out when that date is, they have the next position lined up, and as soon as that hits their bank account, they're off, right? And so that happens, we've done these presentations and using that boss discussion point with advisors and business owner clients that they have, and those horror stories are out there all over the place. And so what a restricted endorsement bonus arrangement does is puts a legal contract in between the employer and the client, or their employee, I should say, and is really that golden handcuff, quote unquote, terminology that we've probably all heard in this business. And so what it does is, puts a restriction, puts an assignment on side of the policy that restricts the client from surrendering the policy and taking the cash and walking, taking a withdrawal, borrowing against it, pledging it as collateral against something else, or changing ownership. So it really, is out there. And people ask me all the time, is like, well, can they, do a vesting schedule, for recapture, of that premium? And there's, if you think about it, if the employer's taking a tax deduction, the employee's having to pay taxes on it, it's tough to be able to do that. So it's really, as I put it, a bargaining chip, right? So let's just say somebody's into agreement, they put a 10-year restrictive, endorsement bonus arrangement into the plan. Somebody decides to leave. This is a real world example. And they're saying, I've got to go. The business owner holds that endorsement. And so, what they could say is, if you help us finish out this project, or if you help us onboard this next individual, I'll release that policy to you. The policy is free and clear. Then the employee can surrender it, withdraw against it, borrow against it, continue funding it, have the new employer pick up that. That happens a lot of times, and they're bargaining, with the negotiation work with the new employer, saying, hey, I've got this plan. Would you continue paying this package? Because my current employer is doing it. And a lot of times they'll go through and do so. So it gives them that ability to have a discussion. They're typically 10 years or less, from what I've seen in my career. And it's a very minimal expense from an attorney fee perspective to have that restrictive endorsement bonus arrangement put together.
Yeah, they are really slick, and again, I think a lot of the people listening in here are pretty familiar with just the base, 162 bonus. And if you think of, when you're looking at rewarding that top talent, there's kind of two ends of the spectrum. You've got reward on this side, you got retention on this side. You mentioned it, Brad. The full reward is, hey, I know when that bonus is coming on this date, and as soon as it hits my checking account, it's doing nothing for retention. All the way on the other end, you got the non-qualified deferred compensation, where I'm not getting anything other than a promise and saying, hey, you're going to get something down the road. So that restrictive endorsement kind of falls a little bit right in the middle of there. It still gives them the gratification, but gets a little bit more clause for the business owner as well. So really appreciate that. And I know we're coming up here in just a few minutes left in our time here, but one of the other questions I kind of had before I have you finish it up here, Brad, is you talked a little bit on just kind of the difference. I loved how you put, it doesn't have to be the same setup for every single employee. You can pick those employees that you want. What are some of the most common ways? I mean, I believe you said, overfunding, more accumulation, versus death benefit focus. But what are you seeing in the market? What are employers really gravitating toward from a design standpoint?
Yeah, great question. And I would say the majority of these solutions, they're the executives, they're the key individuals, probably in that 40 to 55, 60 range. 60 is kind of the top, just to look at the marketplace, because they may be wanting to keep somebody around until they fully retire, and so they're going to do a 5-year funding with an endorsement for 5 years and try to get them to the end. And they're really identifying those individuals that the typical benefit package, they're maxing out, right? So they've maxed out their defined contribution plan. They're maxing out, their, HSAs, they're sitting into that and saying, what more can you give me, Mr. Employer, other than just, compensation, right? And we understand that compensation piece comes through, and that may be one piece of it, but, what we're seeing happen is like, this is going to overlay, provide some tax diversification with regards to, having reportable income, because distributions, if structured correctly from life insurance policies, can be taken out in a non-reportable income basis. So, you may have this qualified plan and the defined contribution. Now we have another plan that's has non-reportable income to help you through your retirement. But I would say the majority of them are funded, 5 to 10 years in duration, are sitting there being overfunded designs with minimum death benefit impact, to really help that cash asset grow. And, say, your $30,000-$50,000 a year bonus, quote unquote, is going to be worth a lot more than that in 10, 15 years down the road. So.
Yep. Awesome. Well, if we, or any last thoughts, we'll remind everybody there is a Q&A section in here if you want to type any additional questions in that we can take a peek at. But Brad, any last final thoughts, comments as we finish up here?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, as we finish up, we have built, one of the best advanced markets teams that's providing, presentations like we have today, as well as providing support, to the advisors and distribution partners in the field, right? 162 bonus is a great way to entree into the business owner space from an executive planning perspective. And hopefully we've accomplished, how to approach that and how to be able to have those conversations. But as you work up the levels and get to more complex situations, definitely it's a resource that we have a lot of different presentation abilities to put together, in actual ledgers, as well as have, attorneys on staff to have conversations with yourself and with, the attorneys maybe with for your clients. And so definitely don't forget about and leverage those resources. We invest a lot of money, and they're, the best in the marketplace, and provide a lot of value. So that's a great tool to be able to help you expand in the business owner space. And I'm willing to help along the way as well. I've got a lot of experience and enjoy the space quite nicely.
Perfect. Nope, that sounds excellent. Well, excellent. I appreciate it, Brad. And as we wrap up, I just want to remind everybody that today's brew and our entire library are recorded and shared on the brew page on our website, www.e4.insurance. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to keep up with all our brewcasts. So they're released every Wednesday. So one quick question that popped in here, Brad, before we wrap up. What are the best ways to identify a 162 bonus is the right solution for a business? What type of opportunities are we looking for?
Yeah, I would say your smaller to mid-sized businesses, I would say typically in that, under 100 employee basis. I would say those businesses that you may be seeing, where the business owner is, 10, 15 years out from retirement. They've got a goal, they have a finish line in place, and, really being able to go in and say, how can we help solidify, add value, add marketability to your business, as you're nearing that goal line, right? And so this is how we can do that. We can, lock in to retain, key employees that are going to help you drive that, will improve your marketability, improve your valuation, right, of your business, because you have people to help that, purchaser of the business through that transition. One thing that I found out, I worked on a really interesting case about 4 or 5 years ago, where private equity had came in and then backed out of the equation, right? those executives knew what the private equity firm was going to give them with regards to ownership. And so they had that piece in their mouth of having ownership of something, and that was going to keep them around through that transition. And when that was taken away, you know, they wanted ownership in the current company, which the owner didn't want to do. And so a 162 bonus was a great solution to be able to give them bonus, give them opportunities to see what that company was going to be valued at, and build that over a period of time, and keep them out of needing that ownership stake. So I would say identifying those companies nearing transition, that are setting out on new goals, business owners that are maybe buying other businesses, and really want to protect, and retain those key people to keep that continuity in place.
Excellent. And I know there's one other quick question. If the Life Care LTC product can be used, especially for older execs, I believe the answer is yes. It just kind of pick and choose and just got to be designed the appropriate way.
That is absolutely correct. We can definitely use that product inside of that type of situation, as they are individually owned. We do have separately identifiable premium as well, if it's going to be, from a small business owner and a C Corp perspective. So as well, just throw that in there as well. It's one of the nuances that we built into that product, but absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I thank you for your time, Brad. And our last thing before we wrap up is we want to do our giveaway. So if you can pick a number between 1 and 25.
26 was my baseball number. Gosh, why didn't we have 26 people? Let's go number 11. I like number 11.
Number 11. The winner is Debbie Struthers. Debbie, excellent. Congratulations, and thank you for joining. You'll be the winner of our CE voucher and Starbucks gift card, coming to you from all of us here at E4 Insurance Services. Be on the lookout for some information there. So we thank you again, Brad, for joining us. Next week, the Brew will be live again at 10 a.m. Central Time. We're continuing April's lineup on key person and executive benefits. Does your agency have a thriving commercial and/or employee benefits division? Are you missing out on additional opportunities for your business owners, what they need and what they want? Grant Morgan, Executive Benefits Advisor with Choice Insurance, a division of Visance, joins us to discuss how adding executive benefits has fueled additional revenue to their agency while helping several businesses and families better protect their futures. So, Brad, thank you again, and thank you to everyone for joining in. We'll see you next week on The Brew.